What I mean by neurodiversity is that all brains are different.
Growing up, I felt different to other people, and I sort of viewed myself as an outsider. And actually that was okay, that was all right. I just sort of, somewhere in my heart, accepted that I was different. I don't think it made me feel very good or very well, but it was just who and what I was.
The term neurodiversity actually came into being in the context of the autism disability movement, for want of a better expression, where people with autism were saying, actually, you shouldn't see us as people having something wrong with us. We haven't got a disease. We're not broken. We're just different. We are towards the ends of a spectrum on which everybody is located.
I just thought I was a bit of a freak, to be honest with you. You know, I was like, well, why can't I cope with situations like family members or close friends? Why do I struggle being around so many people? Or, yeah, it used to happen quite a lot in, well, yeah, social situations. And I would say that I was better on a one-to-one basis, but it sort of impacted me more when there were more than, you know, two people there.
What I'm trying to talk about is that if you are significantly different from the average person, and if we think about the average person as being in the middle of the bell curve, if you know what I mean by that, so most of us are in the middle section, but of course there are some of us who are towards the ends, aren't there? Just as a matter of probability, that is bound to be the case. And because we probably exist on many, and maybe millions of different dimensions, it's likely that all of us, in some respects, are outliers rather than average people, who are the ones who are described as normal.
I think one way I dealt with, I suppose, my difference, which I wasn't aware of growing up, was I was very shy, and I feel quite emotional saying this, but I think I sort of isolated myself from other people. And I've always had friends, but if I reflect how it wasn't a very, you know, especially when I was a lot younger, pleasant experience for me. And it was almost like I sort of right now when I think of it, it's like having an out of body experience. I sort of, yeah, and actually maybe that is what happened, is that I used to sort of, you know, maybe dissociate or leave my body to deal with it because it was too stimulating for me.
The human world, of necessity, is created for the majority. That's just practical sense. If you're not, in certain respects, like the majority, if you're a bit different, adapting to that world can be very difficult. Fitting into it can be very difficult. If you can't sit still and you're very distractible and you find it hard to attend to rather dull material, and if you struggle with learning to read and write, you're going to find it very difficult to do well at school. And that can have awful consequences.
If ADHD was something that was diagnosed when I was at school, I probably would have been, you know, labelled, diagnosed with that. And the proof in the pudding is in my school reports. You know, it's so interesting. I found them recently, actually, and I was so ashamed about them that I actually chucked them in the bin, and that's a really sad thing. But I always got really good grades, but it was my behaviour, and it was Jacinta can't sit still, Jacinta can't stop talking, and so I was always in trouble at school. But it was like something that I couldn't help, and I wasn't aware of it at all. But that really, I think, you can see with my emotion here, it really dented my confidence, because that was 10 years of having awful school reports and my parents having to go in and been told that I'm this disruptive person. And as a child, you know, you have no bad intentions, but you're being told that there's something wrong with you, I suppose. So that was really, really challenging for me.
I think it's important to consider the matter of context as well. Actually, if you've got what is often referred to as dyslexia, that's thought of as a disorder, but I prefer to call it difficulties with learning to read and write. Actually, it only becomes salient in a literate society. In a pre-literate society, it wouldn't exist. It wouldn't be noticed. The problem arises when somebody who is not well adapted to functioning in a particular required way has to try and behave in that required way.
I remember working in TV, and one of the things that we had to do were write character profiles, and I was always 2 or 3 behind, and this was before I think I was diagnosed with dyslexia. So it was years and years of not understanding myself or how I'm different, and that really sort of impacts on yourself. Well, it really impacted on my self-esteem.
Something I haven't talked about is the impact on other people, and that's part of what I talk about when I'm counselling somebody who I think has this sort of individual difference, that very often it's actually difficult for other people as well.
I was probably a bit of a loose cannon with my emotional self, body. I was probably sort of reacting quite a lot to my environment. But that's not to say that my emotions weren't coming out left, right and centre as well.
I think there's a tendency to think that people who are normal are all the same, and that people who are abnormal within their disorder categories, if you see what I mean, within their diagnostic categories, that they're all the same as well. And that there's a kind of cut-off between, you know, those who are normal and those who are abnormal. And what I'm thinking about is a much finer gradation of difference on a very large number of spectra or dimensions.
Probably the most helpful thing for me in terms of my neurodiversity and where I am on the spectrum, or, you know, how I vary to others, has been just the simple thing of it was a counsellor that reflected my huge empathic quality. That was key. That was fundamental. Understanding that I was very emotionally sensitive. Understanding that I had huge emotional sensitivity, and then not reacting to it and just sort of loving myself within it, holding myself really, and centering myself and becoming more into my zone than other people's zones. That was sort of, and that is the process that I'm still in, really, that sort of awareness. So that's been so helpful.
The neurodiversity movement within the autism conversation has talked about invisible disability. And the political part of it is saying, well, you know, if other forms of disability are granted special consideration in terms of access and things like that, then perhaps we should get this too. And I think I've got a lot of sympathy for that.
Since understanding who I am and my sensitivities more, I've been able to sort of centre myself and find methods to calm myself down, whether it's, you know, my emotions coming up, or maybe there's a lot going on in the environment and that's overstimulating me. So, you know, I've realised that spending a lot of time on my own, centering myself, is actually key to my overall well-being. So I walk a lot. I love being in nature, and that makes me feel really present and held and safe. And that gives me time to really be with my inner self and my, you know, inner child. You know, there's lots of different ways of describing that.
The temptation for the therapist could be, if they weren't alive to this, it could be to assure the person that there's nothing wrong with them. Now, obviously, there's a problem with saying there's something wrong with you, and I'm not saying there's something wrong. I'm saying, actually, you have some significant individual differences from the norm, which make life in certain situations a lot more challenging and difficult than they are for most people. And actually, we need to recognise that. It's an unfortunate fact. Now, how are we going to deal with it better?
Now I know how to look after myself and what situations, you know, do and don't work for me. And, you know, now I've been able to manage that better. I know it's not a character flaw or something negative about me. I've been able to bring it into my life in a positive way. I might just go, oh, I can see that person might need a hug, or just, you know, maybe they might want to, maybe I should ask them that question to see how they're feeling. And I don't know why I feel emotional about this, but maybe that's what, maybe I lacked that in my life as well. But so going back to my life now, I see that they're gifts because I can give to people, and actually it brings positive things into my life, into my relationships, into my work, and my family as well.